startup are linear. You just grab the phone and you speak with the CEO and you have a decision taken in minutes. If you're HIPAA compliant, that doesn't mean that you're GDPR compliant. You have to go and check that out. But they don't feel bad at business hours. They feel bad at any time. Eventually, we came to the realization that this is a really massive problem. In the digital health space, nobody was working on it. Latin America is even way behind that. The usage of digital solutions to complement or replace conventional therapeutics. And most importantly, that empowers the patients and the parents to be able to give these children the normal quality of life that they deserve. How? We can't tell you yet.
Hey everyone, this is our new episode of Digital Health Interviews, and I'm really excited to introduce our today's guests. He is Dr. Jhonatan Bringas Dimitriades. So hello, Jhonatan.
Hi there, Alex. Nice to see you, and thank you for inviting me.
Could you please tell us about yourself?
Yes, so I'm a Peruvian medical doctor. I did medicine and occupational health in Peru and the Caribbean, and then I moved to Europe around something like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. And I've been really involved in medical technology since then. I've been passing through different medical technology companies from positions of management and medical advice to executive positions as chief medical officer of taking care of the medical communications of companies. And nowadays, I am the co-founder and CEO of Lapsi Health. I'm also joining a new venture in my career, helping Cardiolyse in their medical strategy. And Cardiolyse is a company from Finland and the UK that does cardiac remote patient monitoring. And I'm also involved in medical education initiatives with Medscape, in the board of a couple of companies, and also in the editorial board of Consulta, which is a medical magazine from Latin America. Just really a lot of stuff.
Very interesting, and congrats on your new role. Good luck with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
My first question is actually very easy, I suppose. Who is Chief Medical Officer, and what are the main responsibilities, especially in the technological startup? Because that's very interesting for lots of startup founders.
Yes. So, a chief medical officer in a tech startup can be anything. You can be an advisor to the tech development. So you can tell, for instance, the CTO, I would add this algorithm. I would make this more like, let's talk about the UX. I want to see as a doctor these types of things. So this is important that you can present me these results in this way. And as a patient, or what is beneficial for the patient from the doctor perspective, also, how do you actually use these functions and the benefit of your patient? And then there is a part of the medical communicator. So you're like the evangelist of the startup, right? So you have to bring it to everyone, translate whatever technological development has been created and applied to real world scenarios regarding the clinical practice. So how do you use it in the hospital? Who gets benefit from it? What's the added value? What can I improve in patient journey, but also in the doctor's journey? And then, of course, you have to validate the solution. So you have to think about clinical trial design, talk to the people that are the researchers at the different research centers, or if it's decentralized, and then see that the results are what you're expecting, look into the publication and the wording of publication. However, stay a little bit distant because you are part of the company, so you don't want to have a conflict of interests on the publication results. And of course, there is the part of medical affairs. So giving the information of the company and partnering up with other doctors and other companies worldwide in workshops, in congresses, everything that is medical affairs related and in the regulatory space. I think it's a very broad. We put on many hats, doctors in startups. Some of us have, for instance, if you ask me, I'm more of a strategist for medical implementation. than a regulatory expert. However, I can navigate myself in the respiratory world. I would probably need some support. I am more the type of person that can tell you whether your technology works, doesn't work, how to make it work, or how to create net value from that technology, and how to translate it for the doctor so they can adopt it. That's a little bit my expertise.
Very interesting. But I guess the main word in this position is still medical. So you have to have experience in healthcare, right? In order to get that position.
I think so. Whether you're a doctor or not, that really doesn't matter. You can be a nurse, you can be a dentist, you can be a biologist, but you do have to understand at least not only the medical implication, because you can, for instance, be a great physiologist and understand how this technology could impact, an arrhythmia from the electrophysiological side. But you also need to have the ability to understand clinical practice and the clinical, for instance, the way processes work at a hospital. How does it look the day-to-day life of a doctor? And also what is what we call in Dutch zinnig, which means what makes sense and what doesn't really make sense for a doctor, because it doesn't really save them any space, efficiency, or anything. They could do the same thing without, and then they would probably choose without. So it's those are the things I think we have to really have a clear understanding of the practice, clear understanding of medicine, and of course a clear understanding of processes.
That makes sense. I guess now it's more clear who is chief medical officer. Thanks. My next question is, when you come to a startup to work for that startup, and you're a co-founder of your own startup, when like your first days, what do you start with when you come to join a company?
Okay. Yeah, I think the first days are very, very exciting. When you're a doctor and you're getting, in a startup, everything is new, everything is exciting. On the other hand, there's really a lot of work. I think that the first 2 months are crucial, but also very difficult for a doctor in a startup. You need to read a lot of documentation. You need to practice and use the solution, whether it is a digital therapeutic or remote patient monitoring platform or telemedicine platform. And then you have to read what validation they've had so far and where they want to go to. You have to get to know really the co-founders very well. You have to understand the story behind the solution. So what made you create this? What problem did you see that was not met by the current golden standards, and how can we present this, or how have you envisioned this? And then from that vision and the potential of the solution, then you as a doctor create that or translate it into the medical world. But it takes time. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of reading, a lot of talking, a lot of meeting, and then eventually you make it.
Very cool. Again, good luck with your new role, and those 2 months should go smoothly, I hope.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about Lapsi Health. It's the platform for digital therapeutics. Yes. Could you please tell us a little bit about the startup?
Definitely. So we are a pre-revenue startup, and we are preceded by the co-founders, and we're actually running our fundraise on our seed investment round now. What we have done so far is we have identified methods of interventions for children that have asthma, so that we can increase their adherence and enhance their technique of puffing during asthmatic crisis. We're not a chronic, or let's say maintenance DTX. We are acute DTX. That means we intervene in exacerbations. To compare it to what the rest of the asthma solutions are, which is basically maintenance DTXs. So to be able to understand what the problem is in children with asthma, first we went to, so my CMO, which is also my wife, Diana. She's a PhD in pediatrics, and we were once. This is in 2018. We're just sitting together, and now I asked her, like, which problem can we solve? Because right now we are doing a lot of stuff, but I would also like to just solve a problem. And she said, well, if I see from my side on pediatrics, the biggest problem right now is asthma. So almost, she didn't give me really a cipher, but she said the majority of hospitalizations and of emergencies and of consultations in pediatrics in a normal day is pediatric asthma crisis. So this is a problem. Obviously, it doesn't go away, and it's everywhere in the world, and it's increasing every single year. So we started to dig in. We're like, well, let's just research on it. So we spoke with doctors, we spoke with patients, we spoke with insurances and pharmas. And eventually we came to the realization that this is a really massive problem. In the United States, around $25 billion a year are being spent in pediatric asthma. And there's 10 million days of school missed a year by children, because of asthma crisis. 2 million consults by the GP per year and 36,000 hospitalizations per year. So it's just incredible. And it was also more incredible that in the digital health space, nobody was working on it. So we said, you know what, let's just work on it. And so we started to think about DTX, asthma, where can we go? And there are many companies that are working right now in the maintenance space. So just maintenance of the chronic disease, because that's how DTX started, just analyzing your lifestyle and then adding a component of intervention through the lifestyle interactions. And we said, yes, it's really important, but in children, the problem is not the chronic maintenance. The problem is the exacerbations, where they get complicated and where they get severe or moderated is from how they deal with the exacerbations. So we have to go and tackle that. And what we realized is that there was really no digital solution on that actually give them the feedback that they need during their exacerbations. So the problem in children, according to our global panel of patients, doctors, and experts, is that one, children can't understand or realize their symptoms on time. So they don't have the motivation or the right approach to puff on time, which make them not be able to adhere correctly. And then second, children do it really bad. Less than 15% of children, and this is evidence-based in research, are puffing correctly. So because of the incorrect technique, then the salbutamol, salmeterol, or whatever they are inhaling, it stays in the buccal cavity, and it doesn't really go through to the bronchi, and then it doesn't get absorbed. And because it doesn't get absorbed, then the asthma can't get controlled, because it really needs to be in the tracheal area to be absorbed. So that was a problem for us. It was okay, well, it stays in the mouth, it's not going to get absorbed, we can't really do much about that. We need to help them, but how can you help them if they are playing in their house, if they are with their friends at school? So we need to find a solution that can actually help them to adhere and to get a great technique. And that's how we created Lapsi. Lapsi is a solution that we are developing that actually tackles those both important moments. It gives the child the feedback that they are getting an exacerbation, and at the same time, it helps the children and coach the children to puff better. How? We can't tell you yet. We have a wearable component, we have an AI component, and we are going to tell the world when we finalize our funding round. And but it is something that we're doing very much with a lot of a panel of experts. Our advisory board is a world-class advisory board. We have been able to be privileged to have Craig Lipset, the former head of innovation of Pfizer, current president of the TRA. We have Susanne Terhechen-Lagro, which is the head of the research in pediatric pulmonology in the Amsterdam UMC Hospital. We have people like Carlos Sendon in the United States, which is a known pediatric pulmonologist. Raphael Grossman, which you have interviewed before. Aline Noisette, which is a DTX expert from France and Spain. So with all those minds, and we speak with each other almost every week on the phone, we can develop something that makes sense and that is patient-centric. And most importantly, that empowers the patients and the parents to be able to give these children the normal quality of life that they deserve. So that's what we do.
Very interesting. I really can't wait to hear some great news about your startup. And
thank you.
Good luck with your round of investments you're trying to raise. Following the discussion, if someone would ask you, what is digital therapeutics, how would you define this term?
Yes, so digital therapeutics, I love the term. It just makes complete sense. It's basically the usage of digital solutions to complement or replace conventional therapeutics. Um, let's think about. I always say this when I start in an interview and they ask me about digital therapeutics. The first thing I say is, you're a doctor, Alex. So you went to med school and you remember this. You studied hypertension in cardiology, and your professor, your teacher would tell you, well, hypertension, if it's primary hypertension, basically we treat it with, and it tells you all the amounts of different medications that you can treat it with. Captopril, enalapril, propranolol, blah, 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 and the diuretics and this and that. And then he says, and there's some lifestyle changes that the patient has to do as well because they exacerbate the hypertension. And those are, the fatty foods and the hypercaloric foods and alcohol consumption and coffee consumption and smoking. And all those, right? Lack of exercise. Mm-hmm. And those are the lifestyle interventions that could help you monitor and treat hypertension. However, when we focus on a patient as a doctor, we continuously focus on the medication. So if a patient comes to the consult with us, and I'm the cardiologist, we're going to be asking the patient, well, how was your blood pressure this last 3 months? Well, I had now a couple of peaks of 160 over 100. Okay, so maybe we should higher up your medication. At any moment, we start saying, how many calories a day are you eating? What types of fatty foods are you eating? Are you drinking or not drinking alcohol? How many hours, how many steps are you walking a day? We don't do that, right? But this is the 50% of the treatment. So we're focused on the medication, we're relying on the medication, but we don't realize that lifestyle interventions are super important. And digital therapeutics are compounds, let's call them compounds, digital compounds, that actually tackle on those lifestyle interventions. So they help you as a patient and also as a doctor because you prescribe them sometimes. They help you to monitor your diet if you are diabetic, or to monitor your exercise and your fatty consumption if you're hypertensive. It gives you coaching. It tells you about your disease. It helps you, and that makes, if it's evidence-based, hopefully, it makes a big impact in the maintenance of your disease, to the point that it has a very strong, let's call it, effect, just as medication would have. And that's why we call them digital therapeutics. And there are companies right now that are, I think it started from the endocrine side and mental health. And now it's starting to unravel into cardiology. And I've seen a couple of them in gastroenterology, and I was surprised. And I think there will come, like Lapsi Health is one in pediatrics. They will come and they will continue to develop in different areas of medicine, because at the end of the day, I think that every disease has a different lifestyle intervention that you have to really take care of, in order to do maintenance in chronics. In the part of exacerbations, that's also super cool. I think in that side, we use a lot of biomarkers to really tell patients what to do, how to do it, like Lapsi Health does, and many other ones do. For instance, when you think about exacerbations in your diabetes, and you have your Dexcom that's monitoring constantly your high glycosylated hemoglobin, and then you have a platform like Livongo that will give you an intervention when you are exacerbating. That's also pretty interesting. It really helps to complement the potential of your medication. And that's it.
What I think is, I think this is definitely a good thing for digital healthcare, but the biggest problem, I believe, is the motivation of patients to use that app or whatever frequently. And like, if we're talking about step recording, that's not a problem. Like, any device, any wearable can share the data with the platform, and that's it. But if we're talking about, for example, your food, your diet, you need to track how many calories you ate and stuff like that. So how do we manage that motivation, keep the patient on track and track everything you do?
Yeah, so I think some of the solutions have tackled it really well. With the employer is one of the best ways of doing it, because the patient immediately engages with it because it's provided by the employer. It helps you with your insurance costs, and it really makes sense. I think InsurTech and Digital Therapeutics will have something there. So I'm very excited about that. Another one, in the case of pediatrics, for instance, the caregiver will just, make them comply because they have to get better, right? So if it's a child, then it's the same thing with diabetic children. They just have to wear the wearable. They have to wear the Dexcom because the parent has to see the glucose. There's no other way. And if they have to then get a shot of insulin at the moment that they are exacerbating, they just have to. It's just the way it is. So I think when we talk about crisis management, that's a little bit different. And especially if there's a caregiver, then that can really help. Then there's other ones that are more that give you the right follow-up, for instance, in mental health. And I think patients actually long to this. They really want to have something like that, more of a follow-up, more stability. You have somewhere to go to when you feel bad, especially because if you think about it, like we live in the Netherlands. I was speaking with a pediatrician that works in mental health here from the Netherlands a couple of hours ago, and she was telling me one thing, which is children with mental health, they feel bad, but they don't feel bad at business hours. They feel bad at any time, right? But the doctors are only available at business hours, and then that's it. Who's going to give you treatment then? So there are some hotlines, of course, but it's not enough. So digital therapeutics in mental health give you that follow-up and that feeling of companionship during your process. So I think there are ways that we can get the patient to comply and adhere. There's going to be a lot of incentives necessary, whether it is insurance related, whether it is rewards related, or the companionship, but there will have to be something that will make the patient adhere. The other thing is that we don't have to think that they have to adhere forever. Research says that 3 years is a good amount of years to make a patient adhere. So after that, probably they would drop the DTX, but they would already keep it in their lifestyle.
I see. Okay. Wanted to talk a little bit about regulations. On our channel, we'll talk a lot about American HIPAA compliance, FDA approvals, cybersecurity in general. And I know you're based in Europe right now, and you also know a lot about Latin America regulations. So could you please tell us what are the differences between regulations in American, Latin American, and European markets?
Yes. So regulations, let's talk about, first of all, registering a solution and privacy and data security. So Europe has already a great regulation for that called GDPR. And in America has another one called HIPAA that they really take care of patient data and the privacy of the data. You have to report where it goes. There's even a number of clouds where you can actually work with that are compliant to the same regulations. So you have the security that your data won't be leaked or used for commercial purposes because they are private, like the Amazon Web Services Cloud and those. We don't have those regulations yet in many countries in Latin America, which makes it very complicated to navigate. Some countries are creating those, like Chile, Argentina, and Uruguay are really in the forefront of creating regulations for privacy of data and data security. Some other countries are a little bit behind it. I would say some countries in Central America, Ecuador, they are really behind. Ecuador is not in Central America. Ecuador is South America. I'm saying those, and Ecuador, Peru, they are really lacking yet the development of those parts of the regulatory space, and they are more focusing right now on the validation of a solution as a clinical device at the moment. So they are in the space where Europe is with the MDR, or before the MDD, and the US is with the FDA software as a medical device. So some countries in Latin America have that regulation already. Some other ones are very flexible with the registration side. I would say Chile is extremely flexible. And then, but that's not the only thing that happens that has to be let's say implemented in Latin America. There's the part of the regulatory in reimbursement, in the reimbursement side. And I think that's really key and then guidelines for the usage of digital solutions. I think that's also key. We don't really have many countries that have developed those guidelines and have it very well reimbursed, as if you compare it to the United States, or Europe. Europe just released a code now for remote patient monitoring. The Netherlands, sorry. Germany had it already with DIGA, and there are other countries that have had it already for some time, but the Netherlands, they just did. And I think many countries in Europe are starting to align with that reimbursement method for digital solutions. Estonia has it for a long time. So I think that when we see how different we are, I would say that the United States is really in the forefront. And they have a benefit, and it's that it's 50 states all together, and they have the same regulatory aspects for software registration, for compliancy of data security and privacy, and for reimbursement. So as a company, as a startup, if you want to start from the US, you have a way bigger playground, because when you come to Europe and you want to register as a software or as a medical device, okay, that can be done. And the GDPR is also universal for the European economic space. But then when you want to go into the reimbursement side, you have a mess there. And you have so many countries and they are not aligned. So then you really have to understand what the state of the art is in every country in terms of the reimbursement side, and the usage, of course, of the digital solutions. Latin America is even way behind that. They are still in the beginning of the race. So that's a little bit the landscape, how it goes right now. I would say that for a regulator, this is amazing, because it's really a big space where you can really learn so much. And I think many of the countries, especially in Latin America, that have all these types of regulations, you can also see the identity of the country in the way they work with these regulations. I think they have some cultural connotations, and then you can understand it also from the state of the art of technology in those countries. The ones that have the best regulations are usually the ones that have the most technology literate people, and the ones that are actually better developed in the technology side.
Quick question: if I'm a startup founder, do you think if I'm compliant to GDPR first, it would be easier to get HIPAA compliance later on? And the other way around, if I'm HIPAA compliant, does that mean I'm compliant to GDPR already?
I think GDPR is way more strict
than
HIPAA. So if you're HIPAA compliant, it doesn't mean that you're GDPR compliant. You have to go and check that out. Okay. I think in regulatory terms, Europe is always a little bit tougher. So that's also a benefit for a startup. I mean, if you're a startup from Europe and you already went to the MDR, then FDA is going to be a piece of cake. The same thing goes for GDPR and HIPAA. I think that the part of how to choose, I think it only depends on your solution. If you think about digital therapeutics, for instance, that they are really rising in the United States. But if you think about, for instance, the telemedicine, the just interactive telemedicine or immersive virtual reality, I see that in Europe being very promoted. So it's a matter of understanding what your solution does and which problem you can assess better, and then where you want to start first. And of course, there are a lot of other connotations for startups that have nothing to do with the medical or the facts, that are basically investment related. The investors, they want to see the solution entering their market first, because that's where they are based. And that's also something that as a startup, you really, unfortunately, you have to comply, even though you might think that you are missing a chance. But if I see the development of the market in digital health right now, there was a race at the beginning of the COVID time in 2020, and now I'm seeing it stabilizing. In matters of how many startups are being created and how fast they grow. However, the amounts of investment continue to grow. So what that tells me is that if you're a startup founder and you have something very innovative, do not push yourself too much to enter both markets at the same time, or the race is a little bit slower paced than you think, and there is enough investment. So just make sure that whenever you enter one market, you're ready for that market. You understand the entire landscape, whether it is FDA or MDR, CE, and the reimbursement sides of things. And that you're also ready with the marketing part and the partnerships to really like hit the market. I think is really important. Some founders don't realize that diligence has to be done as well way before.
You've actually answered my next question, but that's good. So I'd like to wrap up our conversation, ask you to give some kind of recommendations to startup founders, no matter Europe, Latin America, the United States. What would you recommend, especially you as a startup founder? You already know some pros and cons, and what are the piece of advice you can give?
Okay, so I am a startup founder now. I have been an advisor to startups for a long time, and also just mainstream companies. I like to work with companies in the way that they are way more validated, and you can really push very interesting projects with them, although they work way slower than when you work in a startup. Startup are linear, you just grab the phone and you speak with the CEO and you have a decision taken in minutes. They are both different worlds. However, they work their markets in a very good way, I think, both of them. When I've been working with and advising startups, I always tell startup founders in the health tech area to never forget to put a doctor on the table. I've advised companies that are very reluctant to have people from the academia coming to join their teams, because they find them boring, or they find that they always have something to say and that their feedback is so annoying. But when you think about it, these people from the academia, they have a way of thinking that is very evidence-based. They love to have things, well fundamented and validated. And when you cross the border of registration with people like that in your team, they've made sure that your solution is very well fundamented. When you enter the market, you have nothing to worry about. So I would really recommend to never forget to put some doctors on the table. Look for a good chief medical officer that has a good track record, that understands the landscape where you are going to, because they're going to be key pieces for your executive team. It's not only about the CEO, the CTO, and the COO. The CMO is as important, and it's a beautiful square of 4 vertices that work in a symbiosis. I love that. So that's my advice for every health tech startup founder.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think that was great. That's it for today, and I'm really happy we had this interview.
Thank you, Alex. It was really great, and I appreciate very much what you do in bringing these messages to the social media and to all the people around there. And I wish you good luck with the rest of your guests.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Good day.
Bye.